Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Brendan Walsh from Rocket Dollar. You might have talked to myself or Chris on the phone. We have John Denza as a guest here today. And the reason that we brought John in and just the partnership with ErisX is we are seeing absolutely spectacular demand for crypto. Since December, 2020, that the phones exploded here at Rocket Dollar, and they pretty much did not stop until crypto got a little bit battered lately. But I always tell people, look, when crypto's down, this is when you should be thinking hard about it. This is when you should be looking at it, trying to look at the price, see if that works for you. Because a lot of people have FOMO. A lot of people want to see, hey, how can I do crypto in an IRA? And so ErisX helps us do that. So John, how do you introduce yourself and a little bit about ErisX, and we'll get to it.
Brendan, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to be able to speak with your users at Rocket Dollar. My name is John Denza. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for ErisX. I've been with the firm for about 2.5 years now. Prior to my engagement with ErisX, I was with, I would say I was in the exchange space with several different exchange providers, mostly focused on equities and options. I've worked at firms called Island ECN to start. I was at NASDAQ for quite some time, Instinet, and then one of my last stints was with BATS, CBOE, for about 11 or 12 years. And then I would say probably about 4 or 5 years ago, probably 5 now, I got the crypto bug and just got sucked in and saw so many of the parallels between my previous capital markets experience, it being market inefficiencies between market data and routing, and the level of market structure that I see coming and evolving into the space, that I felt like I was watching my experience in capital markets and equities almost in fast forward. And I really got excited about the potential for crypto. And that's how, as I mentioned earlier, 2.5 years ago, I ended up at ErisX, and have been leading their sales and account management efforts.
Great. Yeah, and we got our partnership started a few months ago, so really excited to talk about that. We're going to go into a little bit about Crypto 101 here today. We always like to do a quick primer on some of our more hardcore crypto webinars, like we had our last one. There's people saying, hey, this is great, but I don't understand a lot of it. So we're going to do a little Crypto 101. Then John's going to talk a bit about ErisX, how their capabilities work, a little bit about the industry, and then I have a few interesting retirement-focused topics at the end, mostly focused on capital gains and how to avoid that in a retirement account. And then at the end, there's a lot of frequently asked questions from last week. We did a crypto tax webinar. A lot of people ask about when you take crypto off an exchange, what that means for taxes or risk. So I have a few do's and don'ts, what we don't know, what we do know. Kind of a review of last week, but very good stuff to always talk about.
Thanks, Brendan. I forgot, I'll dig right in. I just, for your audience, I love to use analogies. I think analogies are a great way to understand the mechanics of crypto and blockchain. So let's start with most of your users, or a good chunk of them, probably have apps where they pay for certain goods. Let's use Starbucks as an example. So think about it. You go to Starbucks, you order your latte, you get to the counter. Instead of going to your wallet, you go and use your, let's say, your app that you have for Starbucks, and it's got a little barcode there. Next thing you know, you flash it in front of the scanner and it deducts the dollars from your account, and you've purchased the latte. Well, think about it. It's really similar to what happens with crypto and Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a store of value. And the same thing happens is if you have a wallet, which is like an account holding your crypto, you can do the same thing. You could move monies between addresses and make payments on the network. So that's a primer for Bitcoin. But let's dig a little bit deeper. What is blockchain? Blockchain, I like to use an example as, think of like a oversized Excel spreadsheet where everybody is working on the Excel spreadsheet in real time. And when you make edits and changes to that Excel spreadsheet, it's immutable. What does that mean? That means that if Brendan made an adjustment to the spreadsheet, I can't come along and fix his work and change his work. Once it's been created and it's in the history of what has happened and occurred, it's there forever, and it's immutable. That's what I mean. So let's dig a little bit more into what are the different types of cryptocurrencies. I think the two main ones that you would think of is, people have heard of Bitcoin. You've also heard of Ethereum. Bitcoin being a store of value, which I just used in the example before. If you're going to buy goods or purchase something, you can have that deducted from your account and from the number of Bitcoin you're holding. What is Ethereum? Ethereum is, in its simplest terms, is a smart contract. Smart people are probably wondering, well, what is a smart contract? Well, I like to think of it as, here's the best example. Think of if you're, at let's say you're at a hotel and you want to buy a candy bar from the vending machine. You go in, you see that the Kit Kat bar is, let's say, $1.50, and you go in, you put $1 into the system, you hit A3, Kit Kat bar doesn't fall down. It's not coming. It's not falling through. Next thing you know, you put the $1.50 in, you hit A3, the Kit Kat bar falls through. That's a smart contract. If I do this, then this will happen. That's it. And it's really in its simplest kind of form. And let's say take it a step further. If we're going to take it to a broader scale, think about the evolution of what you could do with a smart contract in the future. I think one of the best examples to look at it is think about a house closing and all the pieces that go together for a house closing. You got to deal with the title company. You got to deal with the credit check. You got to focus on, working with your lawyer, the bank, and so forth. What if you can actually have this peer-to-peer network, this smart contract where I could talk directly with the lenders, remove the friction of all the different people along the way, and also by automating it, putting it into a smart contract, you're eliminating the chances for failure. So you technically, one, you're going to be able to streamline the process, reduce the friction and the cost, and you're running, like I said, you're removing that extra human element to it. So therefore it's becoming automated and most likely will not fail in that regard. So
Yeah.
those are kind of the overviews of the two types of protocols.
And a great analogy I heard recently, like a lot of people are calling Bitcoin digital gold now. And then people are thinking like, what is Ethereum? I don't understand what it is. Like, think of it like the Amazon Web Service of crypto. It's a facilitator that provides all this power for, or gas, as they call it, for lots of different applications out there. And people, lots of companies use Amazon Web Service. Lots of crypto focused, blockchain focused companies say, hey, I'm going to use the Ethereum network or blockchain to do this and make my application or build my business on it or something like that.
That's perfect, Brendan. And to kind of further expand on what you said about gold versus Bitcoin, think about the practicality of it too. If you were to go into a convenience store, let's say a Wawa or a 7-Eleven or wherever it may be in your neighborhood, and you go to buy a pack of gum and you have a gold coin, how are they going to break the gold coin up at the counter and make it divisible to afford the 75 cents for that pack of gum? It's not logical. It's not practical. So the benefit of the crypto and the digital piece of it is that you can actually divide it through multiple fractional levels because it goes out, I believe, 7 or 8 decimal places to fractions of a dollar. So it's actually a better use of capital in a sense.
Yeah, and like people saw Bitcoin at 60,000. New people come to the space. They're like, I don't have that kind of money. And yes, you can buy a fractional Bitcoin or Ethereum that's much smaller, maybe $50 or $100 or $2, depending on where you're at, to get access to it. So thank you, John. I think that really helps.
And just to add to it, Brendan, to what you were saying about the minimum increments, like for
Yeah.
example, with the price being at 60,000 and it now being around 33, 34,000, 32, I should say 33, you could actually go into the exchange and purchase Bitcoin for as little as a minimum price increment or minimum amount of $32, $33. So people shouldn't be nervous and concerned about, I have to buy a whole Bitcoin when I'm considering the purchase.
Great. All right, thanks, John. That helps. And yeah, anyone, we have a lot of educational webinars. If you're ever looking for more information, feel free to pop through all the educational content on the YouTube channel. We've done probably about 3 or 4 crypto-focused webinars in the past.
Thanks, Brendan. Should I go through maybe an overview of ErisX now for the audience?
Yeah, so what a lot of questions as I get, people might know some exchanges when I say, hey, ErisX is some people in Chicago with some great experience. I'd love to tell you to tell the story of ErisX, how you guys came to be, because I think the financial industry experience, what I've seen is when crypto started, there was no financial industry people in it. It was all mostly tech-focused people. And then the finance people are like, I don't know what the hell this is. I don't want to deal with it. And what I've seen in the last few years is those two fields have very sharply combined, and we've seen that experience come together.
Yeah, I think, and I'll touch on this further in the discussion, but for there to be a maturity and growth in the industry, you need regulation. And that's an important element of it. And I think that was missing from years ago. And for these institutions to get comfortable with the space, as we're seeing more and more of them make announcements, that's what you need. And that's kind of what we've been focused on at ErisX. And I'll go into that in a little bit.
Great. Awesome. I'll take it away, John.
All right, perfect. I'm going to present an overview of ErisX to the audience now. So just give me a second here. Alrighty. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, we got it. Okay, yep, good.
Perfect. So I'm just going to kind of walk through an overview of ErisX. So the company was founded about, about 7-8 years ago. And what they did was they created this interest rate swap futures product. And it was rather inefficient because the way that the space works with futures is you have to have what's called a DCM, which is from the CFTC. It's a designated contract market status, which means you operate a futures exchange. So you get this medallion from the CFTC, but in the futures industry, you have to have what's called a DCO to clear those trades, derivative clearing organization. So what ended up happening, they launched this futures product, but they're clearing it at an away market, which is rather inefficient because they're clearing it at the CME. So fast forward, they end up licensing the IP to the CME, but they're left holding this medallion to operate a futures exchange, a DCM, which is rather difficult to obtain. It's a federal license from the CFTC. So what happens next is some of the original investors recognize the need for the crypto space to expand and mature, like I was saying, is that you need to have regulation, compliance, and transparency in the space. And so what they did was they first decided that, it would make sense to build a strong cap table of participants. And those cap tables, which I'll just drop to the screen down below, include names like household names you've probably heard of before from the financial industry, like Susquehanna, Virtu, which is a publicly traded proprietary trading firm, Consensus Digital Currency Group. DCG is actually the parent company for which your users have probably heard as GBTC, the tracking stock to BTC, to Bitcoin. Also, we've got exchanges involved, CBOE, CME, NASDAQ. But the piece that I was really excited about is because I mentioned it to you earlier that I've always been involved in the exchange space is you want to have a healthy ecosystem of people interacting with your book. You want to have good liquidity providers having a tight quote with size, but then you also want to have participants where, like your users are going to come in and they're going to get the best price possible and with minimal market slippage. So when I found out that Fidelity, Ameritrade, and TradeStation had invested in ErisX, I was really excited because you could see the potential of bringing this to the retail community. Fidelity and TradeStation are very active on the platform. Ameritrade was acquired by Schwab, but there's been public discussions of Ameritrade and Schwab and possibly E-Trade getting involved in crypto. And we've even heard just as recently as a couple weeks ago that Interactive Brokers was going to start making the product available to their client base. So we end up kind of walk back to the history here. So what ends up happening is in, I would say, April 2019, we launched our spot market. December of 2019, we actually launched our own proprietary trading technology. So you don't outsource our technology when it comes to the matching engine and the exchange. And then we also put up our first futures trade in for crypto as well. During that period, I would say over the last 2 years has been a difficult climb, but we've been successful in going out and obtaining all the money transmitter licenses throughout the United States, which is we've got 51 of those. And what does that mean? It means that we can actually handle and support customer transactions of funds between the state in the states.
Yeah.
And then
just to interrupt there, John, some of our customers, they'll like, oh, I want to use this exchange. And then they find out they're in a state and they're not supported. That happens all the time. So
yes.
Just like that was a lot of work John's team did to get up in pretty much every single state now, I think. Do you have one left?
Yeah, Virginia is the last one, which is pending and we should have soon.
Great.
But as you mentioned, Brendan, the difficult climb there is the fact that not all 2 states are the same. So each of them have their own regulatory requirements and filing requirements. So you're literally blocking and tackling with each of them. And then also to take it a step further, when you're regulated by these states, you're then open to being audited at any time if they want to come in and look at how you're handling your procedures. So we went through that process, and also involved in that process was the fact that we went out and got a New York BIT license, which is extremely difficult, which means that we can actually deal with retail customers in New York.
Yeah.
And to expand on that, we got approved, I would say, April of last year, and maybe one other firm has been approved since then. And I would say also maybe there are probably 20 to 30 applications that are pending right now with the New York Department of Financial Services.
Yeah, really tough to get an account in New York. I hear it from people all the time. A lot of crypto exchanges just won't do it. I mean, it's rough. It's a very big finance hub. It's rough to have that level of regulation, but it also proves ErisX. You guys went through and got that as well.
Yep, it was definitely a challenge, but we were happy to be able to get that on the books. And then also too, to go back to the future side of it, and how we were able to become also a clearinghouse and settlement is we actually obtained our own DCO from the CFTC. So in retrospect, we're regulated, and our exchange rule set is with the CFTC for spot and futures in crypto. So we're federally regulated, and then also regulated on the state side with all the MSBCs. So we've got our DCM, our DCO, and 51 of the MSBs as well. So I figure we'll jump ahead from there. I think I've covered the different regulation, our partner page. One of the big goals for this year is to expand our coin listing. So right now we have Bitcoin, ETH, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and USDC. One of the challenges as an exchange too, which I think your audience might not be aware of, is when you are approved by the New York Department of Financial Services for your BIT license, they have what's called a green list, which means that there's only certain tokens that you can actually list on the exchange that are approved by the New York regulator. So that's been one of the reasons that it's been slightly limited with our list of coins, but we're really making a big push for the tail end of this year to list an additional, I would say 10 to 12 different tokens before year's end. And that's, I'm pushing hard on our product team and the management committee as well. So let's jump ahead here.
Yeah, that's another big FAQ. Hey, what coins does this exchange support? What exchange does this exchange support? Can I get this here? Can I get this? John has told me personally, hey, if you have coins that you see good trading volume that you want to be in ErisX, feel free to send John an email.
Absolutely.
Their committee is working on that. They're adding coin support. So be part of the process, be an active, proactive customers. That feedback really helps the team.
Yeah, the just to expand on that too is, Ethereum is built on the ERC20 protocol. So we've actually coded to that. So if there are other tokens that are on that protocol, the ERC20, it's much easier for us to list those. Some of the other tokens have their own protocol. It's a little bit more challenging, especially when you look at, like I just said, between the New York regulator, also with our custodian to make sure that they can support the coin. And then also we work with several different software providers for risk. So they need to be able to have the tools in place to support those coins as well. So there's multiple moving parts is what I'm trying to say, Brendan. So I figure we'll jump ahead here. Once your users become onboarded to ErisX, they'll have access to what's called our member portal. And here's a desktop version of it. As you can see on the left-hand side, which is expanded here with the quick trade widget, this gives your users the opportunity that if they didn't want to go into the full-blown trading UI and they just wanted to quickly purchase the coins and say, I have, in this example, $1,000. I want to buy as much Bitcoin as possible with that $1,000. They would hit the buy button. You would come back with another screen with the amount of Bitcoin they would be purchasing, and then you would actually have to complete the transaction at that point. And then what would happen from there is, as you can see at the top of the screen here, we have the different values that you have in your different wallets. So your US dollar amount, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. We also have the ability to pull down different reports if you wanted to see your executions. And then also off of here, which we'll go into a little bit different in a little bit, is you have your deposit tab up here that if you wanted to ACH or wire funds into your account, you can. You could do also the trade button, which will take you to the trading UI, which I'll show you in just a little bit. Also wanted to highlight the fact that that member portal, we haven't technically built an app for the portal for people's phones, but we've actually sized the trading UI to fit perfectly on your phone as well. So here's an example of the portal just as it would be seen on your phone. Then we'll jump ahead here. This is the full-blown trading UI interface, the trading user interface. So pretty straightforward here. The left-hand side here where I'm rolling my mouse over is your order entry piece. So what could happen here is you could put your limit price in, the amount that you'd like to purchase. You could also click on one of the orders in the bid or the offer and it'll auto-populate this section as well in here. You can see your coin balances just below that. You have your view of the order book here, and then charting in the middle, time and sales off to the right, and then your transactions with it being either executed transactions or working orders at the bottom of the screen as well. We'll take a look here to take a step further. As I mentioned before, this is a view of what it would look like on your phone if you were trying to make those transactions, where we've actually got the quick order ticket right there. We have, I should say, the order ticket there, not the quick order ticket, because I mentioned that earlier. And then also at the bottom here, you could see the different windows that you could toggle between. You could see the order book, the history, different charting, orders, and then watch list if you're watching a certain price that it'll come into. From there, I'm going to jump ahead to regulation, which I've already talked about a little bit before. You know, we take regulation very seriously here at ErisX. I think it's almost funny. I almost look at times that we feel like we're almost a little bit over-regulated, but there's never such a thing as being over-regulated. We just believe strongly that, you know, for an exchange to be successful in the industry, you have to not only be supported on the federal level and the state level. And that's what we've done by going out, getting the DCO, the DCM, having our exchange rule set filed with the CFTC. And then also it's taken it a step further too at the state level. So let's just jump ahead here. Highlights what I was saying about the DCM, the futures exchange, and the CFTC oversight. Also the DCO, which is our clearinghouse, which supports spot and futures, and then our money transmitter licenses. And here's just a view of the all the states that we have covered in the United States. The only laggard right now is Virginia, but all the other states are covered. So if one of your customers is residing in one of those states, we could support their activity on ErisX. And here's some of the other links that people can use to gather more information about ErisX.
All right. Awesome.
Stop sharing at this point then, just a second.
All right. Yeah. And John, we just had a question about whitelisting doing off exchange ErisX wallet addresses. So do you want to cover that? I know
Yeah, sure.
So let me just read Chuck's question quick.
Yeah.
When will ErisX allow whitelisted crypto wallet addresses to other, self-directed IRA LLC crypto accounts? For example, something like BlockFi, Abra, or Celsius Network, so we can earn yield to buy our crypto. And then, we've talked a lot about this the last few weeks.
Yeah. So, we've been listening to the customer demand, and I've been making a case internally, and we've had some traction with our team here. So previously for LLC accounts, direct member accounts, and solo 401ks, we didn't allow withdrawals and deposits of crypto in those accounts. But after further discussion with the general counsel and management here, we've decided that we're going to move forward with allowing deposits and withdrawals within LLC and solo 401k accounts. So to give the group an update, my general counsel has already drafted language that'll be residing on the exchange member portal, so that when one of your customers would go to do a withdrawal from the account, it'll prompt them with this additional language, just basically saying that you're aware of the risk. By removing it off exchange, you're responsible for the tax implications and so forth. So what I'm doing right now is I've got the language prepared. I'm waiting for the next release for my product team. And then once it gets into that release, we of course just want to test it and make sure everything is working the way it should. And then at that point, we'll make a formal announcement that will be permitting people to make withdrawals from and deposits into their account at ErisX.
Yeah, awesome. And Chuck, to answer your question, we had a lot of people ask about that. And just so everyone knows how the industry works out there, ErisX also works with some direct custody IRA accounts, and sometimes with direct custody, it depends on custodians, whereas the LLC and the solo 401k have a little bit more checkbook control and flexibility. So later on with my slides, I'm going to educate on, with this capability, what you can do, but also just some risks, what you should be keeping track of, or potentially potential pitfalls for your taxes. So thank you, Chuck, for the question. Benjamin asked, are there any crypto index funds available on ErisX?
No, as of right now, no.
Yeah, so you can buy into the major cryptos listed, and then ErisX is going to be continuing to adding different cryptos that are supported on the platform. All right, so John, if you go into the participant section, you can give me back host.
The participant section.
You'll see panelists.
All right, I see panelists.
And then you'll see more on my name, and go more and make host. It's a dumb setting. I keep forgetting to. All right.
All right. I think you're good, right?
Yeah, I can share now. That's what I was waiting for. All right, so we got a lot of crypto FAQs, and people are asking, hey, where's the hardcore stuff? Definitely, I'm going to talk about and review some of the stuff we talked about last week or a week or two ago, but definitely feel free to review our last webinar. What did we talk about in our last webinar? We went very, very, very in depth with a crypto tax specialist on a lot of what we know about crypto taxes and what we don't know about crypto taxes. And also, how does this impact you in an IRA? The technology is so new that a lot of people like, hey, do I have to pay capital gains tax? I don't know. Do I have to pay tax on this or that? A lot of people don't know. So I'm going to go over just some basics. Hey, here's how taxation works in a traditional Roth IRA. And whenever you're taking crypto off an exchange, here are ways to keep basic tax records. Here are ways to avoid pitfalls. And here are things we really don't know. We can't really give tax advice on that at Rocket Dollar, but we could say, look, these are unknowns. These are gray areas. These are risk areas that you should either reduce or avoid risk in. Okay, bring it. And if you can watch the Q&A for me, as there's none right now, but there might be some in the Q&A and chat that come in. Someone asked, where does liquidity for ErisX come from?
Great question. So we're a little bit different than, there's two types of liquidity providers, I would say, in the industry. There's market makers, which go out and they try to seek direct relationships. But what happens with the market maker is they're not regulated the same way, because with an exchange, it's about fair access. I have to treat everybody equally, and I'm regulated differently, and I'm audited by federal and state. So there's the market makers that try to have, and then there's the exchanges. And the benefit of an exchange like ourselves is we actually have market makers resting liquidity there, and they're competing against each other to earn your order. So that's one of the benefits of not only the regulation, but also getting the best price as well.
Oh, awesome. We just got a compliment from somebody that, the exchange platform is excellent and easy to use.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I also personally opened an account recently. I've been trading a bit of Ethereum on there. Easy. Just got it in a few bit and doing that with my Roth IRA. So, all right, let me share here. And also another last thing before I jump in my slides. A lot of exchanges have had really long opening times. That was a huge, huge, huge frustration, and kind of one of the reasons I called up John frustrated in the first place. I'm like, look, we need a partnership like now. ErisX, the onboarding team, I think is a week or five days or less. That's the promise that they give. Within 5 days, they're going to get you an account. They're going to get your IRA, LLC, or solo 401k up there, assuming all your paperwork is good to go. And then you can wire money from our partner bank account to ErisX. So especially with crypto prices like they are, people ask, I need to get in the market now. Someone's not responding. I've tried to go other places. They're not responding. Consider ErisX. You can get on there. You can be trading crypto very quickly.
You ask about ACH funding. We do have ACH funding when you're from Victor. So
yeah, so
we have wire and ACH we accept.
You can add the ACH capability with Solera and work that out there. Let me get my slides up here.
Yeah, just to expand on what Brendan was saying, we take customer service very seriously at ErisX. So we have a client service team that's available 7 to 7 every day, Monday through Friday, working with users as they're trying to onboard and facilitating their paperwork. And then we also have a trade desk that is available over the phone, which is a rarity if you're going to speak to an exchange. But yeah, the desk is manned 24/7. So if there's a problem with your trading account, you'll be able to get on there and help you and offer assistance.
Yeah, and that's also a really big rarity in the crypto world, is just being able to get someone on the phone in a panicky situation. Maybe you're just nervous or you don't know what's going on. Being able to talk to someone, especially when it comes to an IRA, there's a little bit extra added complexity to that sometimes. Being able to call someone is a huge help. Okay, you already kind of know me. I'm just going to keep moving quickly because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of FAQs. But the only thing of note here, I did come from the Chicago financial industry. I was around a lot of the futures people. Just a lot of that experience comes from the trading floors around Chicago. Those are the people that were teaching me, in that part of the financial industry. And I was doing financial advising and 401ks before I came to Rocket Dollar. So we offer a traditional Roth and solo 401k. I'm going to get into a little just the basics of a crypto IRA. Then I'm going to jump into those hardcore FAQs. The solo 401k is just for self-employed earners, but it's a very powerful account if you want to check out our other webinars on that. So here's a diagram of our IRA LLC. What Rocket Dollar makes is in purple here on the left. We make the IRA with our custody partner. We always use a Colorado LLC. We're located in Texas, but the Colorado LLC is cheap, easy. The State Department responds to us quickly. They mirror a lot of Delaware LLC law. A lot of people like Wyoming. If you like Wyoming, you can open an LLC below ours and actually have your Colorado one be the 100% investor in that Wyoming LLC. The crypto people love the Wyoming LLC. And then our partner bank account was at Solera. So from our partner bank account, you can send money to ErisX, to a trading account there after you've registered, to a blockchain startup, other investments in there. All right. And what's the advantage of the LLC? More control over the entire account. No deal review. So like if you loved ErisX and we had never heard of them before, you could apply and start your account there. And no per investment or crypto trade fees. So Rocket Dollar does not participate in ErisX trade fees. Everything that ErisX fees set is theirs alone. You never have to worry about Rocket Dollar adding on to trade fees. When you see a direct custody IRA out there, some of them do not have the LLC in them. A lot of times the IRA custodian will whack on extra percentage points on every single trade, custody, transaction. It just starts adding up quite a bit very quickly. And if you ever have an investment gain here and you're returning it to your IRA to maybe distribute it, maybe you're like, I want to put it back in stocks and bonds. You just got to know, you got to bring that back to the partner bank account. If it's in the crypto world, we're going to talk about that. But if you're say, hey, I'm totally getting out of crypto, you got to bring that back through a official channel to bring it back to the checkbook IRA. Should never pocket anything or put it in a personal crypto or bank account. All right, and big diagram, but again, look at the purple. This is what we do with our solo 401k. We make a plan document. We establish a retirement trust. The solo 401k can do traditional and also Roth dollars, which makes it very powerful. So you don't really have to pick your favorite. These are all real estate investments here, but it's just showing, look, what the big variety that you can do with a solo 401k. Also called a EQRP or enhanced retirement plan by some of our competitors. So with crypto, a lot of people think, hey, capital gains tax, that's really brutal. In a traditional IRA, if you're investing in crypto, you do not have to pay capital gains. You're only going to pay ordinary income tax rates. You pay those taxes when you draw it during your retirement accounts. And the traditional IRA, if your taxes are brutal at the current year, you can contribute and reduce your taxable income. If you're making $100,000 and you throw $6,000 into an IRA, the IRS, it appears to the IRS like you made 94. Roth IRAs, very popular with crypto investors. Contributions can always be taken out tax-free. There can be some complexities here, but as long as you keep things in there for 5 years, generally all the rest of that money can become tax-free. You have to be careful with big investment gains, sometimes do calculations, but if you wait all the way until retirement, you pay no taxes when you withdraw. You might have heard of Peter Thiel recently and a $5 billion Roth IRA. People are like, how the hell did he do that? He did that through a self-directed IRA. He mostly did it through startup investing. He might have touched on some touchy rules by investing in companies too close to him, but that is how he built up his Roth IRA to be that large. Here are some common strategies I see with Roth and crypto. A lot of people are converting traditional IRAs into Roth IRAs. You might see this as a, you might hear about the backdoor Roth. You might hear people talking about a Roth conversion. They're two different strategies, but why are people doing those? Current taxes are pretty historically low right now. They're about the lowest since World War II. Government deficits are probably the highest they've been in a very long time. So just politically, it doesn't even matter what your stripes you're wearing and who you're cheering for. There might be some upward pressure on taxes in the next 20, 30 years. We don't know, but a lot of people are feeling that and want to get in the Roth IRA saying, hey, taxes are low now. I want to take care of my tax obligation. That's in crypto, especially if crypto is a long-term asset I want to be in. High volatility or a lower risk crypto, like a stable coin, whatever it is. Whatever you're doing, people like to do it through a Roth IRA. In early retirement, when I was a financial planner, Roth dollars are always what you're drawing on first. You try and draw on those first because you don't have to pay taxes on them. And usually your expenses get lower when you're up in your upper 70s and 80s. So that's where the traditional IRA is a bit better. So I've noticed people who ignore their Roths. When I talk to older investors, that's one of the biggest regrets. If they did not take care of their Roth account, it's usually a small amount of money compared to their traditional IRAs and 401ks. So people who take care of the Roth early have that time to grow it over time, because you can get restricted from it if you make too much money. Then you have to use one of those special strategies. I say save it all or strategically withdraw, just because when I see people take out all money out of their retirement account, they usually don't do too well. People that, if you're trying to constantly pull money out of your Roth, you might not end up with too much in the end. So Roth is really good to really stockpile that. All right, I'm just going to fast forward to some of our, hardcore questions. I know with the last 20 minutes. Again, go in our last webinar, we go over a lot of issues with a tax specialist who helps people with their tax returns and also represents some in tax court on crypto. It goes over a lot of what we do and don't know on crypto taxes. I'm going to go into the most common FAQs again from here. And our last webinar really goes into how the IRS builds a regulation, how they go to court, and how they build an appeals process, and then finally, new regulation. So that's very informative for a lot of people that have more higher level theoretical questions. So when John was talking about adding the ability to go to off-exchange places with your crypto, we get a lot of questions, what I can and I cannot do. Honestly, a lot of this stuff is, technology is run ahead of the law. So we can best apply the laws that we know. And sometimes we have to look at previous laws. How did the IRS enforce previous assets? So this right here, this is not tax advice. This is just saying when people talk to me on the phone, they ask, hey, Brendan, what is this? I'll tell them, look, that is very risky. I'm not a tax accountant, but you should be avoiding something like that. Could be extreme risk to your retirement account versus, hey, this is something pretty clear cut and easy. So green light, yellow light, red light system. Just something, how comfortable do I generally feel talking to someone when they ask these things? ErisX, when you apply with your IRA or your solo 401k, they'll properly register the IRA, the LLC, and they'll take a W-9 tax form. That W-9 tax form really helps inform if anyone looks at this account, this is inside of an IRA, and that the LLC is a disregarded entity. So that acts as defense for you to show if anyone came, if tax man ever came and said, hey, I need you to pay taxes on ErisX. I need you to pay taxes on this other account. With that extra registration and the W-9, just having those basics there, properly registering the account, properly filling out tax forms, just acts as extra records for you if you ever have to have a question about your taxes, if you have to refile, or if anything ever gets asked. When yellow light, these are some areas that can be small amount of risk or an increasingly large amount of risk, depending on how you do it. There are some services out there. ErisX takes a W-9. They do the whole process. We've talked with them plenty. Their onboarding team is great. There's some places that will take an LLC or take a trust, but they don't really do anything else about taxes, and they don't really know anything else about a self-directed IRA. I've seen some exchanges do this. I've seen some other service do this just because they're not that experienced in a self-directed IRA. Having the LLC properly registered, that's way better than nothing. But not taking a W-9, not properly segmenting LLCs that are taxable versus non-taxable, that's just a risk. A lot of these crypto services get audited all the time. The US services get audited constantly. John, you talked about the states are going in for audits. The IRS is setting itself up for audits. You can type in exchange and audit, and you will see all these top names of all these exchanges, big and small, that are audited all the time. If your LLC looks just the same, we had one exchange, I'm not going to name them on the webinar, but they're like, we don't want to take any tax forms. They specifically refused to take tax forms, even though our customers were asking, hey, can you take a W-9? Can you take some basic tax forms? Can you put in your registration process, this is an IRA? They refused. And if that exchange gets audited, compared to the people who are doing it right, is your LLC going to look any different from those taxable or non-taxable LLCs? So you should not have to pay taxes that account, but do you want to be wrapped up in a big audit where the IRS is shotgunning out letters to a lot of different people and saying, hey, all these LLCs should pay taxes? Then you have to start saying, no, mine's in an IRA. You're already starting a conversation. And for a lot of people, that's not very fun to start. So just know, having the IRA LLC registered or a full entity sign up, that is a great start. Celsius and BlockFi have that. They have that registration ability. In the last webinar, I had people popping into the chat that they've been sending in W-9s and communicating with them on that. So it seems like there's some development there that they're working to try and accept those documents. I have talked with other exchanges and people that just won't take them at all. They don't want to handle it. They don't want to do it. So, educate the exchanges. I'm happy to be out there. If you talk to a certain service provider and they won't take something, let me know. I'm happy to talk to them, educate their staff. ErisX was great over the last few months. They've been great working with us, understanding these complex issues. I see the Q&As are rolling in right now. We want to take a quick.
Brendan, can I address one of them? I just want to go back to Chuck's. He mentioned BlockFi and Arba and Celsius, and these are great networks to do lending on and so forth. But I would just be careful that, historically there was more volatility when the industry was immature and people would borrow coin and there was a higher yield on the coin. Some of these firms now have actually significantly reduced the amount of yield that they're offering. I've even seen some of them where they were offering, first 5 Bitcoin at 5 to 6%. And as of recently, there are now dropped down to like a quarter to half of a Bitcoin, and they're offering 4%. So the moral of the story I'm trying to say is just please, for your audience, stay on top of how these rates are changing because they're evolving with time.
Yeah, a lot of those places change rates constantly according to demand or their needs, or their partners' needs. I don't pretend to know. I've had customers talk to me about, when you stake out crypto, where does this crypto go? Who's using it? What's their security like? I think the biggest question is who's using that stake crypto? Where's your crypto going when it's not on your books and it's being used by someone else and getting yield for it? Somebody's using that crypto and paying a service for it. So I think it helps to know exactly who's using it. If you're like, these are great companies that are using it, these are great resources that are using it, great. If you're not comfortable with who's using that crypto, even if you like the main organization, you need to be comfortable with both sides. The main organization that's helping you stake and who's ever paying them and the yield, because your crypto is basically the product. You're giving them the crypto, someone else is buying that access to get access to that. And, I know there's a variety of different uses that they work with. All right. Can I set up a special needs trust account with ErisX the same way I set up my SDI IRA LLC? John, I believe you guys take trusts, and we have a specific trust form that the onboarding team has worked with.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I'm just going to go quickly through some Q&As quick and roll them. Just go over that. Thank you. Can I convert a traditional IRA to a solo 401k? If you're self-employed, you can do a solo 401k. If you're not, pretty much can't do it. If your spouse is self-employed, it's a great option. For those of us in Virginia on a list when the regulated environment is more prepared for ErisX, Doug, I think ErisX has already been working on this. They have already submitted all that they need for Virginia. So it's kind of one of those things, like it's in process. It just needs to,
it's completely in the hands of the regulator, unfortunately. And at that point, we don't have the control, which is the worst feeling. But I know it's coming soon, and it's the last and final state. So I'm sorry that if you're in Virginia and you don't have access to ErisX.
So Doug, ErisX got approved in pretty much every state and some of the territories. I think they're going to get, I don't want to make any calls here, but just saying it'll get there. I believe it'll get there. They've been through this before. All right, I'm going to go back to the FAQs here because I know there's going to be a lot of questions about them. All right, so yellow light again. These are things that are unknown. These are gray areas according to the IRS. There is no regulations on them yet. Some people say, hey, I have crypto on an exchange. It's clearly registered in my IRA LLC. I have great tax forms for that. Then I use a wallet for it. and maybe I use some other services, but I have one clear wallet that I use. So if you have one wallet just for the IRA, this seems to be fine. You just have to know this is new to the IRS. They're, increasing crypto enforcement. You have to, at all times, be able to prove whatever wallets downstream are owned by the IRA. If you mix any personal crypto in there, if you obscure it or don't have good blockchain records or not good records of the wallet at all, if the IRS thinks this wallet is then taxable or had taxable activity in it, they can start getting an argument with you, and you have to be prepared to support that. So I always tell people, if you're not able to produce records in like 24 hours that are very clear and easy to read, you probably shouldn't be doing something. I heard someone talk on the phone. They want to do 25 different transactions to get this very complex altcoin. And they're like, they're just going so fast. I'm like, if I'm getting overwhelmed on the phone, how do you expect to be sitting across from somebody or a regulator or a tax, the IRS enforcement, rattling off 25 different complex transactions? You need to keep things simple. You should not be taking risks in your IRA. And also if you have one wallet, you shouldn't be sending it 15 different places. It should be centralized. It should be one spot. The farther away you send it, the more Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb trails you send off across the crypto universe. I personally don't think enforcement is going to want to sit there and listen to you as you tell this long tale of how it got there. A physical hardware device. There's nothing saying you can't do it in an IRA. We're going to have more on this in a few slides. There are some issues with how the IRS enforce gold. They really don't like people holding physical assets in their home. I'm going to go a little bit more into the letter of the law in the next slide. Red light, never try and do this. Blockchain and privacy obscuring services. The blockchain record, if you go off exchange or leave ErisX, this is sometimes all you have. If you get rid of that, your account is as good as distributed. The IRS is just not going to play games with that. They already don't like those coins and services to begin with. NFTs are basically digital collectibles. I am 99.9% certain the IRS is going to eventually just say no NFTs in a retirement account. Might be 5 years, might be 10 years, but they're never going to like them. They have never liked collectibles in IRAs because they want you to keep things as investments. They don't like people messing around with classic cars, paintings, and stuff like that. They're not going to like people messing around with NFTs. All right. All right, so hardware devices. We get constant questions about this. And just to know, a peek behind the rocket dollar side is when stuff is unknown like this, tiptoeing in this, we can't tiptoe into tax advice. We can only talk about what we know, what we don't know. And a few things have come out the last few months. Some more custodians are tiptoeing into this. There's no saying you can't, nothing saying you can't use a hardware device. But I'm going to talk about some other areas of gold investors that made a lot of trouble for gold investors in the early 2000s. So that big paragraph there is from the IRS website. I'm not going to read it all, but if you review the webinar, you can look at the text. You can look up this actual text yourself. The IRS does not like you storing gold or precious metals at home. They eventually got so frustrated with investors storing gold and precious metals in their home safes, they shoved everyone back to qualified trusts or custodians. So people who would custody and hold the gold. Someone that could actually was regulated, like all these themes that John was talking about, very strongly regulated, could also check on the transaction, making sure everything was going off without a hitch. So what really important things when it comes to a hardware wallet? How will the IRS see hardware devices? Will they see them as physical possession? Or will they go along with the argument a lot of crypto investors have made? It's like, hey, the hardware device doesn't physically store the crypto. That's on the blockchain. However, this is going to be settled someday in IRS court. You do not want your IRA to be the one that starts getting settled with that. You want to reduce risk. And honestly, if it's safest, keep it on the exchange security. Stuff like this is just unfound by the IRS. I'm going to get in the next slide. With your IRA, if you have a really strong IRA, you don't want to be taking a risk like this. Some people say not your keys, not your coins. I say, the IRS says your tax savings are not your tax savings. You gotta weigh that risk and be careful with that. And as we talked about in the last webinar, it does not matter, if the IRS suddenly decides and they make a ruling, there's a new ruling. It doesn't matter what you think. If they say this is the law now, that's the law now. There's no current law about hardware wallets in an IRA, but eventually we could see that come. Could be tomorrow, could be a few years from now. We don't know. All right. So again, no current ruling. Prepare your account for future risk. This is the mumbo jumbo 408M, the very fine print. Physical possession currently only applies to precious metals. But what we have educated investors at Rocket Dollar, the IRS has done this before in the last 20 years. They've come down on an asset that they don't like people physically storing. What we're trying to educate investors is we could see that come again. So a hot wallet is obviously clear. The physical possession, does that apply to cryptocurrencies? That's debate for the future. That could be a risk for your IRA. If you mishandle a hardware wallet, if you mix retirement funds or personal funds, you could be at a really high risk for a prohibited transaction. On the last webinar, we had our tax specialist. He talked to someone that had tried to do that, and they had a risk. They had some risk hit them and had some trouble. If you cannot prove like a wallet, whether it's physical or a device connected wallet is owned by your IRA, the IRS could force your IRA to be distributed. And I like to make people know this is the whole IRA. This is not just what you messed up on. This is your entire IRA and everything else inside it. Even if all those other assets are not crypto, they'll kick out the whole thing. You lose all the tax benefits on the whole thing. And if you buy a storage device with personal funds, or if you just like throw an old storage device, you're like, I got this old one, I'm just going to use for my retirement account. That could be a prohibited transaction. We don't know. It's generally not good to put anything that you currently have, you bought personally, and start throwing it into IRA business. So what John was talking about at the beginning, yes, a lot of people are asking for the ability to move off the exchange. Stuff I wanted to go through here today, it's like, look, it's not saying there's no risk in that. You need to be prepared for that and what you're doing with your IRA. All right. I have a few things about DeFi here, then we can get into the Q&As. So DeFi has exploded all over. People have been asking about that the last year or two at Rocket Dollar. Most of that has no formally recognized tax or entity records. Most of the government does not know how to tax DeFi yet. They're still figuring that out. All right, I see 10 questions in Q&A, but trust me, we'll get to them soon. Most taxation is still pretty unclear. We talked about that in the last webinar about things that they're just kind of figure out right now. There are blockchain addresses and there are blockchain records. Crypto people fight back and it's like, well, this blockchain record proves that my crypto is owned by my IRA. It's up to the IRS to support that. And it's also, if there's other investors, you're trying to do all your good records and someone's just going crazy. If the people that are messing up are the ones that define the law, you don't want that to ever fall back on you. So if you feel like you're doing fine, the IRS could still be coming after other investors and say, hey, this is not kosher, you're doing things wrong. And then they could make a ruling for everyone else. If you can't prove DeFi or some DeFi protocol was activity of your IRA, again, you could be taxed for it. And one biggest thing people ask about DeFi loans, and there's a lot of rewards for like staking. John said the staking rewards have gone down a bit in percentage points, but sometimes they'll give out something like a Netflix subscription, or they'll let you take out a $2,000 loan or something that you can use personally for personal dollars because you have a lot of crypto in there. Do not do that in an IRA. You could get possibly taxes. I'm not going to go into the complexity of UBIT, but it's a tax that hits a lot of people that do loans in an IRA. And just if you take, like, I think one of the stakers gives out Netflix subscriptions once you hit a certain level. If you start watching that and you're logging into that, that's a clear prohibited transaction. You took an IRA benefit and you pocketed it. You can never, ever, ever, ever pocket an IRA benefit. If you do, it's automatically a prohibited transaction and you're out of risk. Okay, lots of Q&A here. Let me start looking through it.
I could start with the first one from VJ. He was asking which tokens are in the pipeline for ErisX. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of moving parts for us to list these tokens. So it's not just a matter of ErisX making the decision. We have to work with the regulator, the New York Department of Financial Services. We have to make sure we could work on with these on the state level. We also need to make sure that the token is a good project and it's not centralized, let's say like an XRP. And then lastly, also, which is an important component, is our risk vendor that actually tracks transactions on the blockchain needs to support that coin as well, too, from a regulatory standpoint. But to digress here for a second, the coins that we're considering, and they're not definitive, they're still being considered, include Link, Aave, SNX. The next round we were looking at was DAI, Maker, Wrap, BTC, and Pax Gold. And then near the end of the year, if all is going well, we're looking at Uniswap, Yearn, and Compound.
Great. Thank you, John.
And then for staking, we do not offer staking right now, but we are looking at that from that being a solution in the future. So we are working with different vendors and talking about the project.
Great. Yeah. And I know that staking has been a big demand of people. So that's why I like working with ErisX. They're on top of that kind of stuff to serve the customer base and be responsive to it. So someone asked a rocket dollar focus question. Are the people on the partners page the only people I can work with? No. With a checkbook IRA, you can technically work with anyone, almost anyone. The thing is, you have to make sure you're clear in the rules and everything. You have to register that IRA LLC, or you have to register your solo 401k trust, and you should really have them take a W-9. So in crypto, there's a lot of services. Only some services do that. Like we had Celsius up there in the past. They have an entity sign up now. It's great. The reason that they were down is just service. Service wise, they've just been so busy. Expectations wise, whenever someone's up there, Rocket Dollar needs to be confident that they can get really good service and get someone on the phone or get help in there. So you can use anyone, but as I talked about these risks up there, with all these different risks that we just talked about, you should be in a line with someone there. You should be in line. They should be taking proper tax forms. If they're not, you should think carefully before you go use an investment platform that's not taking good tax records. All right, so Vijay had a question about ETH. John, it was also for ETH. Will they keep up with the forks, and is ErisX looking at ETH2 and any staking? Is there nodes being stood up for it?
So we're always looking at the forks, and our market ops team is always prepared to support those forks. So more to come on that front. I don't have anything right now. And then I touched on staking before that we're exploring it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about ETH2 quick. Yeah, so someone asked, I'm looking to do DeFi investing, lending, liquidity mining on Polygon. I'm not familiar with L2 rollups, just so you know, but if you're using a single wallet address, just know that's the only thing you have. If you ever have to defend that, and we went over this in our last webinar, you have to be prepared to defend that in court if it ever comes to it. If someone says, hey, the IRS sends you a letter and it plops onto your mailbox and you open up in your kitchen, it says, we see these 3 things that you have to pay taxes on because they track down the records from these DeFi protocols, which might be hard, but they are, the IRS is getting better at tracking this stuff. The only thing that you have is a wallet. There is one company, Octono, I can put their name in the chat, that actually ties a wallet to a Wyoming LLC. That's the only company I know of that actually ties an Ethereum wallet to an LLC directly. And your Rocket Dollar IRA could invest in that. So if you're just using one wallet, oftentimes people are like, I'm going to use MetaMask. Well, the only thing you're typing in at the top of MetaMask is, oh, this is my IRA's wallet. Well, that's not really an official record. That's just you typing it. That's just, and you can look at blockchain records to connect it. You just got to know you have to be able to protect and defend against everything. So if you're using this DeFi, that's just a risk if you can't prove that it's in your IRA. And this is a gray area. It's new technology. The IRS is figuring it out. So we just don't want you to be caught in a snafu where you can't get it figured out or you can't protect your own IRA and not be prepared for that risk. All right.
I could touch on the staking question from Tori.
Mm-hmm.
So staking, what that basically means is, let's say, for example, with Ethereum, that's probably the more prevalent out of all of them. If you actually deposit your ETH with a certain provider, a node provider, what they would do is you would actually deposit the ETH there, and then on a, I believe, monthly basis, you would actually be receiving more ETH in return as what should say, it would be giving off like almost interest off of the deposited Ethereum. So you would be getting extra Ethereum every month as payment. Now you could take it a step further with some of the DeFi projects. What happens is if you've got some of these coins that are on the ERC20 network, what people can do too is they might stake their Ethereum, let's say with a compound or a sushi. And by staking that, you would actually be kicking off extra coin of Uniswap or Compound. The benefit being there is it's a lending network, but these coins could actually be appreciating in value faster than what you would be getting if you're holding on to the Ethereum. But the downside is you're locking up that Ethereum for a period of time.
Yeah, so think kind of like a bank CD, or you make a sacrifice, money gets locked up, and you start getting some interest or reward in return. Generally with Rockstar and IRAs, it's becoming very popular because it turns crypto from the type of asset class it is into more of a yield-based product. And we have so many customers that just love yield. They can know what the yield is. Be aware, some of that yield can vary throughout the year or from year to year, but it makes a more expected return. Whereas, sometimes crypto is very volatile. So you can say, hey, this asset might be moving up and down a lot, but I'm at least getting this percentage point on it, or I'm getting a small percent of extra coin for every coin that I stake out. So you're kind of locking up some ETH, maybe for a short or a long period of time, and you're getting some type of interest or reward in return for that. And the IRS tends to tax staking pretty aggressively right now. We talked that in our last webinar. They don't really tax it how crypto people feel like they should. They're like, hey, we need to educate lawmakers on this. It's taxed as income, I believe. We went over in our last webinar, can review that. And so some people say, hey, this sucks. I pay a lot of taxes when I stake in my taxable side of my accounts. I want to explore how to do this in an IRA.
And I saw that Victor sent in a note about the ETH 2.0 transition and the locking of it. It kind of goes to what Brendan was just saying too, and with Victor as well, is that this ETH 2.0, you're locking up this coin for a period of time and you can't pull it out. So what happens if the market moves in against you? You can't do anything. You can't get it out. That's the risk that's associated with it. And there is a significant amount of lockup period until they've completed the transition to ETH 2.0. And what happens then is now they have enough people that have posted the collateral that they can make decisions on the nodes as a collective unit.
Yeah, and so choosing how much, what staking projects with ETH2, that's a decision you have to make carefully. And with that, if there is any lockup, you have to think long and hard about that. If they're like, hey, that's going to make it easy for me, I'm not going to have to think about this. I can just be calm. If you're one of those people that say, hey, I need that liquidity, I need to be able to take that out. You need to be able to consider what services you're using. And one of the biggest questions we get across every single asset class, if I invest in this asset, what's my ability to get out? Always review that before you jump in with any service or any asset. All right, let's see here. Okay, so Doug asked, do you have a tax account as a partner? This is all a bit Wild West. It seems like a tax strategy or something everyone on the call needs. So definitely review our last webinar. We had Matthew Metras. He's an EA, a tax specialist that really focuses on cryptocurrency. Rocket Dollar does have another great CPA we refer people to that's more of the really complex self-directed rules. He's not a crypto specialist. I'm happy to introduce any to him, or Matthew Metras, who was on last week, who's the crypto specialist. Someone asked, is a SEP IRA at Rocket Dollar for self-employed individuals? Yes. So a self-employed person or a small business can do a SEP IRA. Typically that works best for somewhere from 2 to 6-ish employees. And you're able to contribute similar to a solo 401k. If you have a solo 401k or you want to do one, you typically can't do it unless you don't have any other employees. The only employees that can be in a solo 401k are you and your spouse. After that, you're kind of out of it. You can't do it. So most people who get frustrated, they get locked out of the solo 401k, can do a SEP. So the SEP does not have Roth ability, but it still has very, very high contribution limits. The solo 401k and the SEP can get up to $58,000 saved per year. So if you're a high income earner and you're self-employed, definitely consider the solo 401k or the SEP. Okay. All right, last call for questions. We went about 10 minutes over, but that's okay. We love to answer that stuff as people come in and participate. All right, I'm going to throw this up on YouTube after. John, thank you so much for
Hey, one little stat I always like to share with people just before we go, just to talk about the growth of the industry and to put things into perspective. You know, I believe that the PayPal news was a true pivot point to the industry. And why I say that is, you know, before PayPal had announced that they were getting involved in crypto, there were only 100 million wallets that have ever been created to hold crypto. Overnight, PayPal announced that they would be supporting crypto, and that opened up access to 350 million new users to crypto. So overnight, we went to 3.5x the amount of people that have access to crypto and wallets. So, you know, we talk about this from, you know, long-term gain, like you're looking at, you know, tremendous potential because of the people that now have access to this asset class.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I think people have been in crypto a long time. They might say like, oh, this doesn't have as many features as I don't know about all PayPal's features, but you know, like a new app will roll out crypto and they'd be like, oh, you can't take it off, or you can't do this, you can't do that. However, just putting it in front of people helps a lot with this adoption. I've had so many people call, even older customers that you know you wouldn't expect to be into crypto are exploring it for their accounts. They say, hey, I do a lot of different alternatives. I have a lot of real estate, do a lot of other stuff. I want to throw a bit into crypto. You know, they've been signing up at ErisX or been signing up and saying, hey, I want to explore cryptocurrency in a small bit in my retirement account to dip their toe in. And, you know, John, we've seen a lot of, I mean, Mass Mutual just bought into crypto. Fidelity's been in it a long time now. They were kind of the first one to get into it. You're seeing a lot of big finance names are finally stopping their tune of, we're going to poo-poo this thing and you know, rag on it, to finally they're dipping their toes in, they're making investments. And so, you know, the US is the government's trying to understand it, but you know, it's here to stay. And the big companies keep coming into that space, and that helps regulation as well, which is a theme today. As these bigger companies come in, these bigger players run in, you know, compared to a retail investor, they're going to push to be like, I need clarity on this, how it's taxed, how this is regulated. They're going to keep pushing the regulators to get more clarity to come into the US space.
Yeah, and just to add on that, here's a perfect example. BNY, Bank of New York, is the largest custodian in the world with 41 trillion in assets under management. And they're already making plans to be able to handle the custody and storage of crypto. And when you have a major player like that has a tremendous influence in the space, you know, it's only going to grow from this point on.
Yeah. Someone asked, our CPA's licensed in every state. I'm not sure about Nathan's licenses. He's in San Antonio. He's just south of Boston here. He's a great asset for everyone. Matthew Metras is a EA. I'm forgetting the exact designation, but he represents people in tax court. He's still, you know, a licensed tax specialist. So you'll have to ask them. Feel free to email info@Rocket Dollar. We can answer any extra questions that you have. John, if people want to get in touch with you or ErisX, where should they go?
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Would love to work with your user base. So my email address is john.denza@erisx.com. I can also be reached at 646-475-2459, and I will also include that in the chat.
Yeah, I just put your email there. Yeah, and then I'll put mine as well. All right, Brendan.Walsh. All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to close up. Appreciate for everyone coming out today. Please feel free to send us around on YouTube as well.
Thanks, Brendan. Always a pleasure.